Wager Talk Today. It is Friday, January the 12th, the eve before the storm. The NFL Wildcard playoffs begin the next 3 days and nights. 6 big NFL Wildcard games. And we'll be taking a deep dive into the NFL playoffs for this week. And also a little bit of look at the NBA as well. Ralph Michaels, Gianni the Greek, and of course, Arthur DiCesare from the Westgate in Las Vegas gives the up-to-date betting information. We're going to start it off, though, this Friday. My co-host, Teddy Covers, and I am Steve Merrill, by the way. If you haven't noticed by now, the Prez is not here. He's heading to Florida. He's going to be passing by me over the airways here. For the next week, I'll be with Teddy Covers, though, at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Wager Talk Today. And let's bring on Stat Daddy, father of Jeff, the chart master, human database, Ralph Michaels. Nicknames, Ralph. It's a mouthful, and I lose it. Great to see you, though, here on this Friday. How are you doing?
Oh, no volume.
Muted. I hope he's doing better than that. I left him speechless with all the nicknames.
Huh?
Teddy, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Teddy Covers, you only have one nickname.
Well, and I'm lucky in that regard that I was single branded. You know, Ted Savransky. No. It'll be Teddy Covers, and Teddy Covers is
Teddy,
the way
I've been doing this
been.
long enough to remember when you went by Ted Savransky, though, back 20 years ago.
Sure, and that's literally like the very beginning of my career. Rob Vino was luck. I thank him to this day. Rob Vino one time I had a website at the time, it was called whocovers.com. And he's like, what about that Teddy Covers guy, when he was talking to someone? And the name just stuck. And they started calling me Teddy Covers. And then I'm like, that'll work. Yeah.
I never realized Rob Vino was the one that first said Teddy Covers. Fascinating.
Rob Vino gave me
we have some great nicknames today. Gianni the Greek, Vegas Runner, Ace. So we've got like 7 nicknames with our first 2 guests. So let's bring on Ralph Michaels, the human database, Stat Daddy. Ralph, I want to hear your lovely voice.
You know, my apologies, guys. I'm in Cleveland where the weather is going to be, 4 degrees on Monday. So that weather going to Buffalo is going to hit here tomorrow. So with that said, seeing family and friends pays a price when you come in the beginning of January.
Yeah, good time to visit. You wanted to start talking some college hoops today before we talk some NFL playoffs and break down the charts. Of course, we're talking with Ralph. And you missed the number one nickname is the Pen. You know, Ralph
Pen.
the Pen Michaels. He even says it on the pens.
I like
Ralph
Father
talks
of
some
Jeff. Nobody else uses that but me. Father of Jeff is my personal favorite, but nobody else likes it. Anyway.
All right, guys.
Kennesaw
I am
State,
breaking
Florida
down.
Gulf Coast. Right now, I'm seeing the home favorite, -7, total 151.5. What do you want to do with this college basketball matchup on the extra board for Friday night?
Well, this is my only college basketball play for today. We're going to the A-Sun, Kennesaw State against Florida Gulf Coast. And I think this is a situation where Florida Gulf Coast, their upset over Florida Atlantic back on December 30th, has this price a little too low. This is clearly a situation for me. Listen, Pat Chambers for Florida Gulf Coast is one of the slowest teams. There's 362 teams in Division I. Their tempo is number 348. That upset against Florida Atlantic, they shot a season high making 3-pointers. They held Florida Atlantic to a season low. That's the type of game where you can pull the upset. But now we're talking about conference play, and the A-Sun plays Wednesday and Friday. That means you're on the road. You have 1 day between games. And the reason I'm on Kennesaw State is this. As I mentioned, Florida Gulf State, a very slow tempo team. They're without 2 starters. So what happened against Queens? Queens is a top 20 team as far as tempo goes. Without those 2 starters, they could only play 7 players, and 3 of them played over 34 minutes. Well, Kennesaw State is the number 1 tempo team in college basketball. Their new coach, Antoine Petaway, guess what? He was an Alabama assistant. We know how fast Alabama runs tempo. Oates came from Buffalo, goes to Alabama, and his assistants say the same thing. So now you have Florida Gulf Coast, only 7 players deep, playing a second road game in 3 days against the Kennesaw State team faster than any. And if you look at Kennesaw State, they are a 3-point shooting team. Again, as you would expect from Alabama, 61% of every field goal attempt has been 3-pointers. And this Florida Gulf Coast team, number 350 in 3-point defense. If this game's close at half, no need to worry. I might even look at it as a live betting situation. I expect the Owls to pull away clearly in the second half against a very depleted and tired Florida Gulf Coast team.
Ralph Michaels talking college hoops. And don't forget the college basketball tip-off show will be on live today at 2 o'clock Eastern here on WagerTalk TV, and, of course, archived afterwards. So a lot more college basketball talk at 2 o'clock Eastern in a couple hours here on the network. But, Ralph, it is Wildcard weekend. 6 NFL games on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, the next 3 days and nights. And let's break down a chart before we actually get to a play at the end of your segment here. We're going to look at a couple of charts. First, let's talk about Wildcard home teams Saturday and Sunday.
Well, you know what? I want everyone to think right now, what percentage of wild card teams team? And if we could see the chart, I want to know if you guys are surprised at this. Going back to 2013, wild card home teams have covered 41.9% of the time. So road teams have covered 58% in the wild card round, going all the way back to 2013. And how about this, guys? With the line average of minus 3.9 points per game, the straight up winner, the home team is only 23-23. So you have a 50% record at minus 3.9 with an average line. But let's take a look at big home favorites. I'm going to talk about the Bills. There's only been 7 wild card home favorites of 8.5 or more since 2013. They have actually gone 5-2 against the spread. There have only been 2 home dogs of 4 or more in the wild card round. Those have gone 2-0 ATS. When you look at that middle range, the 90% of the teams, those home teams have covered only 32.4% of the time. And by the way, if you look at the top right, if you blindly played every wild card game under the total since 2013, you have also cashed 61%. So while I'm not telling you to play road teams and the unders, the historical numbers since 2013 show us that. And one more thing, Teddy, I love your breakdown. We didn't talk about this. Take a look at the very bottom. Wild card home teams on Saturday have gone 10-9-2, 53%. Perhaps there's one less day for the road team to prep, and they had to travel. Sunday home teams in the NFL have covered 31.8% of the time. So just a couple things for you to look at breaking down this big wild card weekend.
So what I'm trying to wrap my head around here, because some of it makes a lot of sense, Ralph, and let's if you could, Dan, leave that chart up for just a minute more, because I want to reference it as we're talking. When you talk about this particular weekend, there are going to be more quality road teams than the average weekend. You're talking about playoff teams, and you oftentimes see the superior playoff team being the road team in this round because the home teams are division winners and you have some elite wildcard teams. So I'm actually not shocked to see that 32.4% from that home -8 to +3.5. That of the two trends makes more sense to me. You're going to see some better teams as road dogs or road favorites here. But the Saturday-Sunday one, I can't make heads or tails of it, Ralph. Is that static? Is that something real? Is that something you would consider betting on when you're talking about how poorly the home teams have done on Sunday in these wild card round matchups?
Left him speechless, Teddy. Left him totally speechless. No, Teddy, I agree with you. The first thing that jumped out to me, Teddy, was that Saturday-Sunday split. I found it hard to make a reason for that. And Ralph actually came up with one, perhaps, the shorter rest day, or you can make an argument that the Sunday teams see things happen on Saturday that motivate them, but I don't think there's anything there. But yeah, I think that's just random. You're talking about a 21 and 23 game sample for each day, and I think it's just random variance. But I do think the over-under is pretty interesting. And I wanted to go deeper with Ralph on the over-under chart. So we'll actually pull up the other chart he has. Hopefully we'll get him back. But, obviously the under has been the play over the last decade. And we talk about this in the NBA playoffs, Teddy, that, postseason games bring more defensive intensity. So maybe there's something there. But let's look at extreme highs and lows. And the Iowa Hawkeyes were my case study all year in college football. They couldn't set the totals low enough. They kept going under. They went under the 2 lowest regular season totals in November, They went under the lowest bowl total in modern history this past season as well, the lowest conference championship total ever. And then the final week last week, the New England Patriots and Jets went under 28.5, which was the lowest regular season total in the last 30 plus years that it's tracked in a lot of databases. So Ralph, what he's looking at here in this chart is the extremes once again. When you have a high total of 47 or more, or a low total of 39 or less. And what's interesting to me, Teddy, is that it doesn't hold up in the playoffs. Playing the highest total as under has actually made money, 19-8. And playing the lowest totals over has also made money, 6-4, very small sample there. What are your take on this? Obviously, overall, there has been 18 and 28 under bias over the last decade. Obviously, that, 47 or more going under isn't a total shock, but still 19-8, a pretty solid record.
So we see this every year at the start of the NBA playoffs, where in the regular season, all the totals are 240, and then all of a sudden you get to the first round of the playoffs, and then you're seeing 220s. It's not shocking to me to see the highest totals have poor track records going over in the postseason. Obviously, you have weather conditions to deal with. Obviously, you're dealing with better defenses than you have throughout the course of the regular season. And your regular season averages don't necessarily mean that much when it comes to winning a January game and -5 wind chill or whatever we're looking at, -20 wind chill. This week, we've got the Packers Cowboys. We have the Rams Lions, two games that are both lined above 50. Ralph's chart says pretty clearly, if you're going to bet the over in these games, maybe give it a second thought. What do you think, Steve?
Well, the other thing I'll point out, if you look at this chart also, yes, playing under 47 has been good, but playing anything under 39 or higher has been good also. Combined, that's 43 and 25. So maybe we should just say, in general, the under's been a good play, like Ralph's first chart showed. And basically, the only time you don't want to be playing the unders is when it dips below 39 or less, So different ways to look at this. But yeah, the under's been the way to play it. And what's interesting to me, Teddy, is that, this goes back to 2013, I believe. About 4 or 5 years ago, we were having tremendous overs for a while and a lot of high-scoring, high-line games. But, of course, that has come back down to earth the last couple of seasons. We had a lot of unders this year, especially the first half of the year. Do you think maybe the odds makers have done a better job now adjusting these playoff totals compared to years past?
Well, not necessarily. The odds makers do what they do. They're trying to balance action. In theory, that's their goal, is to get 50-50 action on both sides. Obviously, it doesn't play out that way in practice like it does in theory, but the books are really trying not to get sided in these situations. So I'm not overly concerned in that regard, really. But to me, the fascinating thing, again, we look at some of these weather games this week. We have the Steelers and the Bills. That totals down now to 34.5. And looking at the WagerTalk live on screen, we're finally seeing some under money for Miami, Kansas City, 43.5 in that ball games. Let's not forget the weather as a piece of this under equation. Obviously, at least 2 games this weekend where weather is likely to have a significant effect on how teams are able to move the football up and down the field.
Yeah, and I'll be doing a deep dive into all 6 playoff games. By the way, I will have a Fade the Public video up later this evening on Friday. Also, by the way, my early numbers look like the public is leaning over in a lot of games. So I think that's interesting that the unders have worked. But we'll also have a weather update for you as well. We might have Ralph back. Let's see if we have Ralph for a quick finish here. He wanted to talk about that Pittsburgh-Buffalo game. And Ralph, we got you here. What are you looking at? If you want to chime in real quick on that over-under chart, go for it. And then also give us a look at that cold weather game.
Obviously, the only reason I used the over-under guide was this. WagerTalk Today viewers have heard all season Prez and Teddy talking about high totals tend to go over, low totals tend to go under. You need to make an adjustment from the regular season to the postseason and not carry those thoughts over. They are a completely individual, separate season. So that was the duplication of why the under's broken down by year. And guys, I apologize for the horrible Wi-Fi. I'm in a hotel. We'll take care of that by next week. But I do like Buffalo minus the 10. Obviously, we have some horrible weather conditions. We're looking at blizzard whiteouts. But this Pittsburgh team, to me, is just a fake team. They were outgained 13 of their first 14 games this season. Then who did they face in the stretch? Browning as a backup quarterback. Seattle, Geno Smith, who got released the next game. Then they faced another backup against Baltimore. So their 3 wins in a row to get to the playoffs were all against backups. You look at teams in the playoffs, only 6 teams in the wild card since 2008 have had to play back-to-back road games, the regular season, and now go on the road again. And oh yeah, by the way, playoff double-digit favorites since 2012 have gone 9-0 straight up, 8-1 ATS. The only loss was Buffalo against Miami last year, and Buffalo turned the ball over 3 times. Miami scored a 17-yard touchdown drive and a 15-yard touchdown drive. So to me, let's not also forget TJ Watt out. Pittsburgh's 1-10 without Watt. They average 2 less sacks per game without him. And this comes down to the running game. I trust Allen to make better decisions, and I give Buffalo's running game and running defense edges against Pittsburgh in this role. So I am going to lay number with the Buffalo Bills in this potential blizzard matchup.
Yeah, looking at the Wager Talk Live odds screen, Buffalo down to 9.5 now in most locations. Total down to 34.5 in that ball game. And Ralph, when it comes to blizzard conditions and frigid weathers and total of 34.5, can you still lay 9.5 comfortably? Is anything going to work in real life like we say it's going to work as we try to handicap the game? Because it feels to me like both of those cold weather games, we can sit here and blah, blah, blah about it all day. The weather on the field may really negate every bit of handicapping you can do for those games.
Yeah, it very well could, Teddy. I will say this. When I looked at the lowest totals in the playoffs and favorites over 7, they were still at a 64% clip. So they have done well against the low totals. Perhaps maybe you look at a team total. If you don't want to lay that low under, perhaps you look at a Pittsburgh under, the way to break it down. But in this case with the home edge, I do feel comfortable. It hasn't made my client play. It may not make my client play. But if you force me to take a side, I clearly do like the Buffalo side, and they still may be in the mix moving forward. So I am comfortable in this role.
Yeah, Ralph stole my thoughts there. When you said that, I was thinking, well, if you don't like Pittsburgh and it's a low total, Pittsburgh team total under might make some sense, but it's also less than 2 touchdowns, so they're going to have to really be shut down to stay under there as well. That's Ralph Michaels, the Pin, Stat Daddy, the human database. Ralph, what else you got going on this weekend at WagerTalk.com?
Well, guys, make sure you head to my homepage and check out the WagerTalk Playoff Guide. It's 13 pages. There are 15 ATS situations, which you see the records straight up and ATS. I have every NFL team, how many players started in each position. You can check the health of the team. Let me give you one quick example. Tampa Bay, the healthiest playoff team this year, they've only used 60 players this season. To compare that, the Houston Texans have used 81 players. So you have a team like Tampa Bay that's had a lot of health and still struggled. And you have teams like Houston that have had a plethora of players used this season. So just a bunch of data, a free guide on my homepage now, shortcut.wt.buzz/RM.
Great information. Once again, that's free on Ralph's page. Check him out right now, Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com. Johnny, the Greek's coming up. We're going to talk about a couple more NFL playoff games for Saturday. Also, a fantastic playoff special that you can get with Bet with Ace. We're going to get to that in a moment. But, Teddy, I want to talk to you about what bettors learned. Wrong side losers is what you want to talk about. I'm intrigued by this.
No, it was not very intriguing, unfortunately. So yesterday, my big game breakdown was right here on Wager Talk Today, free play, backing the Celtics on the second of back-to-backs in Milwaukee. And I turned the game on, and it was early second quarter. It was $56-23. Joe Mazzulla didn't even put his starters back on the floor after halftime. The game was already over well before halftime. Wrong side loser. So then I turn on my client play, and it's actually even worse than that. The Blazers got punked by OKC earlier. They're coming off a no-show game. OKC on the second of back-to-backs. I thought it's a perfect opportunity for the Blazers to step up. They've been feisty road dogs. They really have at times this year. Well, not last night. Clicked that on. It was 21-5 with 6 minutes left in the first. And I swear that game felt over already. The Blazers were playing like they were stuck in the mud. OKC on the second of back-to-backs, they were flying around the court. And the game got worse and worse. The Blazers down 30, down 40, down 50, down 60. ESPN headline bad. They lost by 62. Wrong sides are less aggravating than tough losses, as long as they're relatively few and far between. Tough losses will rip your gut out. Wrong sides, hey, I got this one wrong. let's see what we can do tomorrow. Let's see what we can do in the next game. When they come every day, it's a problem because that means you're out of sync, you're out of rhythm. But as long as they're not coming every day, wrong sides are going to happen. You take it, you take the slap, it's just one loss, and you move on to the next day. That's what we'll do off last night. 2 wrong sides. Absolutely wrong. Couldn't have been more wrong. That was then. This is now. 270, 237, and 173 in the NBA since February 22. We'll see if we can get it back tonight. The key, don't let a wrong side loser, and they will happen, inevitably. Don't let a wrong side loser get you off your game. Write it off. Come back the next day. Focus moving forward. That's what I learned last night. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, what I'll say is, like anything in life, when something goes wrong, learn from it, right? And if I like a team, I think it's a good situational spot in any sport, and then they vastly underperform, that's a red flag for me. And I'm going to look at that team differently. I'm going to maybe stay off that team, not use them maybe if they're coming in another good spot. And you want to kind of dig a little bit deeper. Now, a misleading loss, while that can be frustrating, can set up great value. I go back to the national championship last year. I liked Michigan over TCU. TCU beat them. I thought it was a phony win. I thought they were still a phony team. Came back even stronger with Georgia than in the national title. I don't want to say it was similar this year, but it was somewhat similar. I didn't mind the fact that Washington beat Texas because I liked Michigan over Washington in the finals. So, tough losses or misleading losses can actually set up good plays. But when you have a bad beat is different than a bad handicap. And when something doesn't go as I think it should, definitely take a step back and evaluate to make sure maybe you're not missing something. There's something that hasn't changed with that team or that situation. So, yeah, look, nobody likes losing, but it's part of the game. If you hit 60% of the course of the season, you're going to be the best in the world. So you're going to lose 40% of the time still. Learn from those losses so you get more winners down the road. NBA has been great for Teddy, as he mentioned. NBA has been great for me as well. So check out our NBA best bets on a daily basis at WagerTalk.com. But let's get back to some NFL talk with Gianni the Greek. And we're going to look at both Saturday games, Gianni. And let's start right off with that early game. Texans, I think it's the 7th time they've been a wild card team. They've been the 4:30 Saturday start Eastern every single time. So not a surprise. That's the safest bets in all of sports, that the wild card spot's going to go to the Texans first. But do you see a money-making opportunity maybe in this game, Cleveland at Houston?
Yeah, excuse me. I see the value on the home team. Obviously, I'm not going to take the 2 points because +2 is only worth +104 on the money line, and you could get much better than that already. So it's a bet I'm going to obviously take on the money line. I see a more advantageous position there, and for me, it just makes sense. I think this is a little bit of recency bias with Cleveland having just beaten them. Just a few weeks back as 3-point favorites. Let's not forget Houston lost that game by 2 touchdowns. But when you dig a little deeper, what do I expect? Nothing but a regression from the Flacco side. I love the story. Everybody does. It's great for sports radio. It's great for content and that kind of stuff on ESPN. But for a sports bettor like me, what I expect is a regression or progression towards the mean. And we know that Flacco's mean is not 120 quarterback rating. So we do expect him to regress closer to his historical mean. And also, let's not forget, we have 2 extremes. I touch on that all the time. I actually made 4 day trades this morning that I was able to close out of because I found 4 extremes with the market volatility. And what do we have? We have a Cleveland team that's dominated at home, won 8 of 9 games at home. But when they go on the road, they're 3-5. They're a losing football team. When I look at the Houston Texans, pretty much the same story. On the road, they're a 500 team. When they play at home, they're 67%. They're 6-3, won 6 of 9 games. Those are 2 polar opposites. And I love spots like that because they're overlooked when a team's already accomplished it, meaning Cleveland already went to Houston and beat them. I love Houston in this spot. They get their revenge. And I also think we have the better team, except for the defensive side of the ball. But that offensive side of the ball is where will make the difference. Take Houston. Don't take the points. Bet them on the money line, and they'll advance to the next round.
So, Ace, let me ask you this. Always a pleasure to talk to you on a Friday, and I love your energy every Friday, my friend, very, very much.
Thank you.
But the one thing that I don't have a lot of systems. I'm not a system player. But there's one system I never step in front of, and it's wild card round weekend. and it's worked for the better part of 2 decades. And it just says take the team that faced the tougher schedule in the regular season. And it's not close. Cleveland faced a top 10 schedule, and Houston faced a bottom 10 schedule. Do you worry at all that the Texans' wins and their success this season came against weaker foes, and the fact they lost by 2 TDs at home to this Browns team just 3 weeks ago tells us really what they are?
No, I mean, not really. You kind of know what they are. I mean, granted, Cleveland's played great. I can't take anything away from them. They've won 8 of 10 games. And more importantly, they've outperformed the betting market, having covered 7 of the last 10. But I'm a trader that loves to bet against situations like that. When I see a team that's just crushing the market, I expect the market to correct itself. And I think that's what we're seeing here with Houston getting a home playoff game, and they're underdogs just because we saw this game play out a couple weeks ago. Let's not forget, Houston's had pressure on them the last couple weeks. They had the win to get to where they are, and they did exactly that. They won a road game in Indianapolis. They beat Tennessee. They did what they're supposed to do to get here. I think they're just being overlooked. Like, okay, we expected this team to take a couple of years with Stroud being a rookie quarterback. You don't expect them to move that quickly, but they're here now. And I think it's Cleveland that we got to worry about because of the quarterback position. Again, as good as he's played in those few games, it's still a very small sample size. He's thrown 200 passes. That's it. Like, when he throws 400 passes, let's see what that rating looks like. Let's see what that completion percentage looks like. Let's see what those touchdowns look like. I don't think it's going to look anything like it does so far. And again, I don't think we're going to get a chance to see that long term because I think they'll be out of the playoffs this week. But if I'm wrong, I'm going to still look to fade Cleveland ahead because of the fact I'm expecting the regression on Flacco. Just look at that QB rating, look at how he's played, and argue that he should be able to sustain that. To me, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Johnny, it's what we were just talking about. If the Browns do end up winning, you get a better play against them maybe in the next round, so you can always get it back in that situation. And also, I love to fade the public, as you guys know, in both the markets. I love how I use the financial market analogy because it is so similar to sports betting markets. But also, everything I'm looking at this week, Twitter, everywhere else, is that Joe Flacco, 11-3 ATS, the best point spread record of all the starting quarterbacks. It does feel like all of a sudden everybody loves Flacco, even though you can make an argument he's in the back half of his career.
There's so much randomness to any game. Like, there's so much randomness, even if that's the beauty of football. And that's why it's so hard for recreational bettors to turn a profit, because they don't have the patience. You could have the best team and not win. The best team's not supposed to win the Super Bowl because of the randomness of one game. They're not playing 5-game, 7-game series where the cream's going to rise to the top. The worst team could beat the best team any week. Obviously, that's not what you're just betting on. But even with knowing you're going in with the better team, the spread becomes the great equalizer. And even though it's not a lot of points, it is points, and I'm able to get plus money where they don't even have to win this game 50% of the time for me to be profitable. And I think Houston is capable of doing that against a team like Cleveland. I just don't think they're that dominant, especially away from home.
We're talking the NFL playoffs with Gianni the Greek, and we're going to look at the late game for Saturday in a moment. But just a quick reminder, Ace is #1 ranked the last 3 years in the NFL playoffs at WagerTalk.com. So you might want to pay attention to what he's saying. You also might want to go check out a tremendous offer he's got right now, $149 for the entire playoff package, that with Ace package for the entire NFL playoffs. And that includes the Super Bowls and his #1 ranked props as well for the Super Bowls. So just a fantastic offer right now at WagerTalk.com. And Ace, we'll talk a little bit more about that here at the end of the segment. You see the record on the screen. They're just fantastic returns in the NFL playoffs the last 3 years. And back in 2019, he finished #4, but he hit 61% as well. So consistent winners in the NFL postseason.
I love playoffs. I love postseason in all sports. Playoffs. I love postseason. It's the one time I actually watch games. I do watch playoffs because they matter. So I'm
with you,
into
man.
them.
I watch less NFL than I watch at any point during the regular season now. It's like an emotional roller coaster. I don't need it. It's a fix, I think, for the emotion, the junkies who like the ups and downs. It's like watching regular season NBA. but I like the playoffs as well. I think these games are real. And
Real
speaking of which, we got to
quickly,
ask you about this
I'm
late
so
game.
Wait, real
No, go ahead.
quickly, Steve, I'm so glad you said that, because a young guy that I've been working with for a couple years that's very sharp. He provides accounts, he moves for different groups, kind of did the same route I did, just in a different generation. And he's where I was 20 years ago, where he's watching every game, morning to night, blah, 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 blah. Well, he started slowing down. He goes to me just about a week ago. He's like, dude, I can't believe you've been telling me this for 4 or 5 years, and I finally did it, and my life is so much better. I don't even look at my scores or my accounts till the next morning anymore. If I'm not looking to bet live, it doesn't matter to me. He's like, and I sleep better. I don't have that pressure, that stress. I handicap better during the day. I mean, it depends how you're affected by it. Like Teddy needs to watch all the games, and it doesn't affect him. He's able to gather that data, pay attention to the small little details. I'm an emotional guy. I've got a nervous disposition. I can't do things like that. So I kind of stay to my strengths and try to avoid pitfalls that cause problems for me.
Well, no, I totally agree. And the quality of life is the big reason I recommend it as well. And yes, you can pick up things watching games, like especially the NBA. I think that's the one you can maybe pick up little things watching it. But it's hard to watch 7 or 8 NBA games in a night anyway when they're all going on at the same time. So you still have to have a better method long term. And for me, I can recap a game in 5 or 10 minutes, watching the highlights, looking at the box scores, reading the recaps, and still have hours of extra time in the day to do other things. But yeah, the quality of life for me, man, the emotional roller coaster, I don't need it. Same thing as watching tick by tick in the financial markets. So it's an interesting approach. I'm glad to hear you do the same. Got to ask you, though, about this late game before you go. It's going to be one of the coldest games in the history of the NFL, Dolphins, Chiefs. And we were talking about weather and we were talking about totals. And I'm sure you'll agree, Ace, that I think weather is one of the most overrated factors when people want to bet the under, right? Because rain and wet conditions can help scoring because you know where you're cutting before the defender. Wind, fog, whiteouts, maybe Buffalo, that could be different. But the wind isn't going to be an issue. The rain, the precipitation, there's no snow. It's just going to be very cold. So what are you doing with this total, Dolphins and Chiefs, on Saturday night?
I love how weather people look to take advantage of it, but it's baked into the cake. By the time 95% of bettors get to the window, it's been baked into the cake. And let me explain real quickly why. Because last Sunday night, as before the game was just about final and we knew what the playoff matchups were, my NFL pre-roll, the guy that I bankroll, sends me a text and says, we got to go under immediately in the Pittsburgh game. Immediately go under at 40 when they open it, 40 and a half because of the weather. Okay, I listened to him. I did it. He was right. He got way ahead of the market. Now that information's useless. It's meaningless after the line gets adjusted. Again, it's just good talk for sports radio. Here's a perfect situation where we know we're seeing an overreaction. Bottom line, Kansas City played Miami in November in Kansas City. What was the total? 51 and a half. And let's not forget, Kansas City was coming in off a game where they only scored 9 points. So they weren't coming in off a game where they lit it up. They came off a game where they weren't scoring points. So you expect recency bias. And the total was still 51 and a half. And where is it now? 43? Are you kidding me? You bet over till you run out of money. Win or lose, you know you're getting the best of it. I don't even need to go into the metrics as far as the offensive power that both these teams do possess. But just the bottom line of the recency bias, I love how you see Kansas City coming in off a low-scoring game against the Chargers. You have Miami coming in off a low-scoring game against Buffalo. It's like the perfect storm to get that overvalued on an under. That's exactly what this situation is. I love the over. I think this has 50 points written all over it. Sure, it's cold, but once they get going, these guys are going to warm up. They're going to be just fine. We know all the talk about Miami and their history and blah, 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 blah. This offense has a 48.4 offensive success rate. The NFL average is 42.1. They're going to score. They had problems scoring last time. Now they get another shot at that defense. Trust me, Miami will have a lot more success. Don't be surprised if they win this game straight up. but bet the over. I love the over, Teddy. I love the over. I really think that you're getting just such a good price because of all those factors. That is just noise, nothing but noise.
Check out Gianni's playoff all access pass. 3 straight years he's been number one. Plus 22 units last year, plus 31 units in 2021, plus 35 units in 2020. And of course, the package includes his Super Bowl props. 159 and 93 at WagerTalk. Lifetime plus 190 units with NFL proposition wagers. Outstanding track record, Greek. Anything else you want to promote?
No, man, just thank you guys for all your support. We got out to a good start, and make sure you stay disciplined. Follow the blueprint. Money management's key. I want you to feel the way we felt on December 31st, just 2 weeks back. I want you to have that happiness 12 months from now, where you feel you're in that 0.5% that actually beat the books when all the dust settled. But the only way to do that is manage your money correctly, risk management, whether you're winning or losing. It's not as easy as it looks when you're running hot, and it's not as tough as it looks when you're running cold. Stick to the program, and I promise you, good things will happen. Again, I appreciate all the support and wish you guys the best of luck. Whether you follow or fade, I'm already going to bet my sides. But again, whatever's going to happen, I just hope you cash them, don't trash them this weekend.
Definition of taking a long-term investment approach, the Bet with Ace program. Check it out. Gianni the Greek at WagerTalk.com. Good luck this weekend, Ace. Thanks for joining us on Friday as he does each week. And also, we're going to have Arthur DiCesare in just a couple minutes from the Westgate Superbook in Vegas. He joins us each Friday as well. But real quick, Teddy, let's get a little big game breakdown. We talked some college hoops. Once again, the college basketball show will be on at 2 o'clock Eastern live. Let's talk some NBA here. NBA show will be on at 4 o'clock today on Friday as well. Give us a little big game breakdown, Sixers and Kings for Friday night.
Absolutely. Big game breakdown time. Let's go to Philadelphia. ESPN matchup tonight. The 76ers and the Sacramento Kings. We're looking at the WagerTalk live odds screen. Let's call it Philadelphia -1. Total sitting at 241.5 as the prevailing current number. Philly -1 at home. What gives? Well, obviously, when you see that number, you know someone's missing, and that man would be obviously Joel Embiid. Philly just 2-7 straight up this season without Embiid, 21-6 with Embiid. So a pretty significant dichotomy. That being said, let's start putting some asterisks about that 2-7 without Embiid. 8 of the 9 games came on the road, including their overtime loss at Atlanta in their last ball game. And that's including some really tough venues: Boston, Minnesota, Houston, Orlando, Miami, New Orleans, etc., etc. So they've actually been, A, stepping up in class a lot in these games, and B, most of them have been on the highway. Tonight, don't know if the Sacramento's a step up in class necessarily, not a big one, and they're playing at home. They're coming off this loss to Atlanta, and I always read the player quotes. Tyrese Maxey, quote, "Tonight I feel like guys fought. From 1 through however many guys we have here. We fought on defense, we fought on offense, was extremely aggressive. So I think we got to go in there and keep being ourselves, keep being aggressive. So we'll try to get us a dub on Friday." There's urgency for Philadelphia right now. Again, 1-4 straight up in their last 5 ball games. That's the same urgency for Sacramento. They're off back-to-back blowouts over Charlotte and Detroit, 2 of the 3 worst teams in the trip, to open their road trip. They're at Milwaukee and at Phoenix Nest. It's not like this is the only game to concentrate on. And when we start to look at what Sacramento's been doing, who they've been beating, who they've been losing to, boy, it really stood out to me when you pay attention. They're beating weaker teams. Toronto, Atlanta, Memphis, Orlando when they were slumping, Phoenix when they were slumping, Washington, Utah. That's their last 7 wins. Last time they beat a good team in good form, like a month ago, when they beat OKC by 5. Fat and happy versus young and hungry, -1. Give me Philly without Embiid. I'll take my chances with the 76ers to get the W tonight. There's your big game breakdown. Back to you, Mr. Merrill.
Teddy, I know one system, we talk about systems. One system you probably haven't wanted to fade the last couple of years is just blindly playing the cheaper price with the shorthanded team. It continues to work in the NBA more times than not. And That applies again tonight to the Sixers. I mean, they're only basically a pick 'em against a team they would be a huge favorite against normally, at least in years past. So Teddy's taking a look at the Sixers at home, minus Embiid, but don't let it scare you. It's been money in the bank the last couple of years in the NBA. Hey, speaking of money in the bank, let's go to Vegas. Talk to Arthur DiCesare, Westgate Superbook. And Art, I'm filling in for the Prez. I know that makes you nervous because a lot of times that means he is coming to Vegas more times than not, and you're going to have to shelter down and get in the soundproof room. But don't worry, he is going to Florida. He'll be nowhere near Vegas, so you and Teddy are safe this week. And I get to guest host, so it's great to see you, Arthur. And how are things looking at the Westgate? Big weekend coming up, huh?
It's a huge weekend. And listen, Steve, it's good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. Happy New Year, happy holidays, all that good stuff. And listen, when Prez is 3,000 miles away from me, even when he's in the United States, I feel safe. I can probably still hear him, but I know I won't have to see his face and have him fist pumping throughout my sports book.
So it's the NFL postseason. We're not going to talk NBA today. We're not going to talk college hoops. We're not going to talk NHL. We have 6 playoff games. I want your opinion on all 6. Should we start from the back? Let's start with the Monday night game. We haven't talked about that game at all.
Ooh.
Tampa, Philadelphia. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Where's the action coming? Talk about what's going on at the Westgate Superbook when it comes to Monday Night Football, Bucks and Eagles.
Yeah, obviously Super Wildcard weekend. We get the 2 Saturday, the 3 Sunday, and the 1 Monday. So, we've had this a couple of years now. I love the setup. It's great for us, great for business, great for action. Open the Eagles quickly, minus 244. Listen, money came in on the Eagles. There was no surprise there. And now it's kind of been dead. The Eagles really have stopped taking money at 3. Under money has started to come in. We creeped down to 43.5 because we opened 44. This game has seen it's probably between this and I would say the Buffalo game that has kind of seen the least action on the sides. But right now, Philly is going to be a team. Now, they played in week 3. It was 25-11. Totally 2 different teams, especially for Philly. Listen, we want Tampa to win the game. I know at some point a lot of things will roll into Philly Monday night, especially with money lines. Even though they aren't that popular in money line parlays so far, I think eventually they will get there. So right now we are Tampa fans.
All right, we're going backwards. We're going to go to the Sunday night game. Going to talk about which one we got here? Rams-Lions. 2 quarterbacks are on the opposite team a couple years ago. One of the higher totals of the weekend. What's the look on this one? It's hovering around that key number of 51. This and the Dallas game, which we're going to talk about next, are both 50.5, 51.5. Of course, 51 a very key total number. So I'm interested in your take on this one. Lions, haven't won a playoff game since 1991. Whew.
Yeah, this is what a game. I mean, obviously the Stafford angle, and that's all good for ESPN and the cameras and all that. But we opened Lions minus 3, 51.5. We did get to 3.5 briefly, and it was brief. And when we got there, Sharps gobbled up to 3.5. This is the game where the players are taking the Rams on the money line. They seem to be the dog that is going to attract the most love on the money line, thinking they can win the game straight up. It doesn't feel like many people want to lay the number with the Lions. We've moved our total all the way up to 52.5. So we've seen money come in on the over. There's no surprise there. Really, for us, that's been public money. Hasn't been that any sharp groups came in and laid it. But early initial love was from the sharps on the Rams in the game.
Dak Prescott does not have a playoff track record worthy of many wagers. That being said, in theory, he has the right matchup this week against the youngest team in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers. And yet, it looks to me, looking at the WagerTalk Live odds screen, that we've seen a little bit of Green Bay money in this ballgame. Talk to me. Cowboys, Packers, Dallas, 16-0, their last 16 at home. Can they win by margin this weekend?
We opened Dallas 7.5, total 49.5. And you're right. Green Bay came in with money, and it was sharp money. At 7.5, we've now moved to 7, total of 50.5. No surprise there. This is more of a public play to the over as well, moving up a point. Probably we'll see it move another half point, maybe even a point, because I think the public will get involved taking the over here. Obviously, Dallas is a different animal at home. They score basically 30-plus points a game, and you think Green Bay could probably help you there on the over. Dallas is clearly going to be the most popular money line leg and the most popular teaser leg because they're in that sweet spot of 7 and 7.5. We could ever get Green Bay to win the game outright, it would be huge for us. It would set up our whole weekend. So early money came in on Green Bay with sharps at 7.5, public on the over.
Interesting. And I'm going to have the Fade the Public video later today, Art, so I'd love to hear the public sides that you're getting as well. So keep those coming. I appreciate it. Let's talk about the early game. The next two games we're going to talk about are the two weather games. We'll talk about the Sunday afternoon game, Pittsburgh-Buffalo. Gianni the Greek just said this total dropped almost 6 points from the initial opener. Your thoughts on how you're handling this, maybe where the public's going to come in, and also want to get your thoughts on what you do with these weather-type games. Do you move it on air before, or do you just wait to let the money tell you which way to move? Because obviously it's been a pretty big adjustment on the total, and the sides coming down as well.
Oh, absolutely. In this game, the weather is insane. Opened Buffalo minus 9.5. We were 40.5. I saw some offshore markets even higher. I mean, there were some totals that were crazy.
It was 44.5 in this game.
Yeah, exactly. You saw, and it's so funny. We sat in that room Sunday, and Jeff, the great Jeff Sherman, he said, there's a 44.5 out there. I mean, we saw some of those, and I mean, that's just insane. Now, when we opened 40.5, we knew instantly we were going to take a bet or two and just really start driving the number down. We're at 34 right now. I mean, there are 34.5s out there, but we're at 34. We're basically saying, please come bet the over. Hey, you want to bet the over? Come bet it. We're going to give you the best price out there. Obviously, a little bit of Steeler money has come in at plus 10, but it hasn't been anything crazy. This is, we're in kind of the Dallas territory, too. If Pittsburgh could ever win the game outright, it would be enormous for us because Buffalo obviously will be in all money line parlays. Pretty much, they're not in a teaser spot number-wise, but people still will tease Buffalo. They just will. They'll find a way to do it. Not that they're getting through 7, but they're not going to get through 3. So, it's just one of those things. But, yeah, this is a fascinating total. We've moved 6.5 points total-wise. So, if we could get the game to go over, probably be a good thing.
So, let me ask you this real quick. Do you worry about getting middle? Do you worry about it going over 34 and under 40.5?
Hey, Teddy, always a possibility, right? And you always do worry about that. But at the same time, you have to trust what you're doing. You have to trust your moves and just the way the market's going. You can't sit there and go, well, we're at 40.5. We took all this under money. Now we're going to be, maybe 37 to 30. You just have to move with it. It's one of 6 games that is going to attract a ton of action and a ton of money. So we're okay, maybe if we do get middled on the game.
Arthur DiCesare, risk management supervisor over the Westgate Superbook here in fabulous, sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. Art, 2 more games to discuss. Real quick, we've talked about them both on the show already today, so I just want your thoughts from a bookmaker perspective. Let's start with Miami and Kansas City. And is the weather here real? Is the weather in Buffalo going to be worse? And what are we going to do with Chiefs and Dolphins? Look, there's been a little bit of Kansas City money. Is this knee-jerk reaction to Miami losing a home field advantage with that fourth quarter meltdown against Buffalo last week?
It does kind of feel that way, and I'm with you, Teddy. I think Buffalo is by far the worst of the weather games. You guys talked about it in the previous segment. It's going to be cold in Kansas City. Okay. There's a lot of cold playoff games, but snow, wind, sleet, rain, that's all a different story. When we opened the Chiefs, we opened 3.5, moved to 4.5 really quickly. Total was 43.5 on our opener. We actually saw over money come in. We got to as high as 44.5. We've now moved back to our opener of 43.5. Kansas City is another one. Will be very popular in all the money line parlay legs. We saw this game in London. It was 21-14, kind of an ugly game. The Chiefs have kind of been one of those teams that a lot of sharp guys don't want to come in and just lay numbers with. This is a different situation. Obviously, Miami's got a ton of injuries, but Kansas City has not been, despite that early initial move, it was more of a market move, really hasn't been sharp groups or sharp guys wanting to come in that we respect and lay 3.5, 4, or 4.5 for Kansas City.
That Peacock Network, by the way, is Saturday nights. You might have some extra viewers within the Westgate Superbook who do not get the Peacock Network. By the way, comment in the live chat, but more importantly, comment below. Let me know if you're going to buy the Peacock Network, if you have it already, if you don't care. I think it's kind of a BS move by the NFL putting the primetime game on a subscription only. And that's because this 4:30 Eastern kickoff is on NBC. They could have made this the Peacock game, and then nobody would have subscribed because it's Cleveland, Houston. as I mentioned earlier, Art, 7th time or 8th time, whatever. Every time Houston's made the playoff, they've been the initial wildcard game, no lie. And it's a rematch from just the Christmas Eve game. This total is over a field goal higher than it was just a few weeks ago. Your thoughts on the side total for Cleveland Houston?
Steve, great call too. That's a terrible job by the NFL putting that game on Peacock, making people pay for an NFL playoff game. That's a disaster. It's horrible. We sit here all year loving the NFL, but blood, sweat, and tears. Now you're gonna make us pay for a game. Terrible. It's awful. I'm out on that. But Browns at Texans. We opened the Browns quickly, 1.5. Moved quickly. We got to 2.5 minus 120 on the Browns, and then we saw the Sharps come. Sharps took the Texans at plus 2.5, even money. Now we're at Browns minus 2. So the Texan money Sharp did come in. Total was 44 when we opened, 44.5. It's kind of been bouncing around a little bit. And when they did play in Week 16, people have to remember, there was no Stroud in that game. Stroud was in concussion protocol. He did not play in the game. I know they got crushed in the game, but it's Davis Mills and Stroud. We're talking, apples and bowling balls. They're not even close to being the same type of player. So, it's ridiculous. But sharp money is on the Texans. There's really nothing to speak of as far as the total goes. It's just kind of, like I said, been bouncing around half point here, half point there.
Yeah, the difference between apples and bowling balls. That's an analogy I love. Arthur DiCesare. Before I let you go, and I said I promised we wouldn't do, but we do a little NHL. We have to give the hockey guys some love. What stands out tonight on the NHL betting card to you? Who are the pros betting? Who are the Joes betting?
Obviously, it's a small card. We only got 2 games. Nashville saw some over money last night at plus 160 on the road against Dallas. It's been a 10-cent move there. But like I said, it's only a 2-game card, so not a lot. And, listen, we do basketball every week, Teddy, so let me throw a couple colleges at you. Total and a side. Minnesota, Indiana, 147.5 was an opener. Seen under money, move it to 143.5. And Iowa at home against Nebraska, a good Nebraska team. Iowa opened 3, sharp money came in. Iowa now 4.5.
Love it, Art. Little Friday information for the daily sports, and of course a deep dive into the NFL playoffs for the next 3 days and nights from Arthur DiCesare, Westgate Superbook in Las Vegas. And Art, tell the viewers, those that might be traveling to town or those that are in Vegas, what you got going on the Westgate this weekend.
The Westgate Superbook, guys, come down. Obviously, we're going to have wall-to-wall playoffs, everything you need. It's going to be a packed house, packed weekend, especially on the 3 different days. Monday, obviously, people clear out a little bit. Saturday and Sunday, and then you have all the sports going on anyway. So it's going to be wall-to-wall, a lot of fun. Come down, check us out at the Westgate. And as always, if I'm there, which I will be because it's playoff weekends, you come down, you say hi, ask for me. If I have a couple minutes, I'll pop out and say hi.
And just to be clear, you will have the Peacock game on. So all of us in Vegas who don't have the Peacock network can come down to the Westgate and watch it for free. Thank you so much, Art. Best of luck this weekend. Will talk to you next week. Take us home, Steve. That's all we got, man. We finished the week.
So Teddy, will you have the Peacock network? I'm intrigued now. Are you going to have to go to the Westgate?
I don't know what kind of streaming we have, dude. I don't ever remember watching Peacock, so I'm not sure. I don't think we have
either.
It. So yeah, I'll have to go out and watch that game on Saturday.
It's funny because I thought the same thing the other day when I saw it was on there. I was like, I don't know if I get it or not because I know some of these college basketball games are on, but I haven't watched those on Peacock. So anyway, viewers, seriously, comment below. Let us know your thoughts on this. You're going to have the Peacock if you get it. If you don't care, what you're going to do for Saturday Night NFL. And don't forget, my NFL Fade the Public video will be up this weekend. Your deep dive into all 6 games. College basketball show at 2 Eastern, NBA show at 4 o'clock Eastern today on Friday. That's Teddy Covers. I'm Steve Merrill. Check out our best bets and daily free plays on our pages, WagerTalk.com. Teddy, I'll do this next Monday through Thursday. Arthur doesn't know. We'll get the Prez back next Friday, but we'll have a fun time in the meantime. Take us home.
Yeah, sucks for Art. Rough go of it. Thank you so much for watching WagerTalk TV. Thank you for watching WagerTalk Today. We'll do it again on Monday, each and every weekday, 9 a.m. here on the Left Coast, noon for you back east. Between now and Monday's show, enjoy the games, and best of luck with all your wagers.